you weren't obviously with WWE at the time that Bill DeMott was ousted from his training because he was doing it for NXT, I think, and he was a trainer for WWE for years and years and years, and he was head trainer for a while as well. He was basically thrown out. It's almost like a pre-Me Too movement, I guess, in, I don't know, 2012, 2013 or something like that. I don't know, but quite a lot of wrestlers who trained under him basically were not happy with some of the things he was saying, a few of the things he was getting other people to do. Other people would defend Bill to the hilt and say, it's more of the boot camp mentality and stuff. But then we get into the 2010s and that's, I guess, less tolerated. Someone on Reddit has helpfully said it basically comes down to three things. One, he's been accused of berating, insulting WWE trainees with politically incorrect language. Some examples include repeated use of the term and for a gay person, or a meatball in the UK, telling a black wrestler to go back to Africa, telling a Middle Eastern trainee to go back to building bombs, and more. Secondly, DeMott has been accused of intentionally, I haven't got my glasses, causing or trying to cause injuries amongst the trainees or making existing injuries worse through neglect or maliciousness. And thirdly, the strength and conditioning coach, Matt Wichlinski, has been accused of repeated counts of sexual harassment and not suffered any disciplinary action for doing so. This is allegedly due to DeMott being unwilling to take action against him. Okay, so I'm sure you heard of all these accusations and more at the time. I specifically remember the big one that was making all the wrestling news websites was that he would say if you want to go home early, you had to shove a donut up your ass, or someone had to eat it out the crack of someone's bum or something like that. Weird games like that, I guess, as well.
I have heard the donut story, and I kind of didn't want to hear the rest of it. Now I just did. This is a very skewed version of the NFL. Hey, if you who don't catch punts are basically fourth down, the punter punts it, and the person catches and returns it. They would normally put somebody way back there that normally doesn't field punts. If you catch this, we go home early. That's a fun way of ending the day. This donut thing, not so much fun for anybody. Well, maybe, who knows? It's wrestling. But I do remember, and Johnny Swinger was kind of my little informant down there because he was down there in Deep South. And one of the most egregious things, by the way, I was friends with Bill for years, if not decades. I was in his wedding and along with Al Snow, kept in touch with him through the years off and on. And, he went through a lot of tragedy after this. So let's not, forget that as well. I would not wish that on anybody, especially somebody like Bill. But at the same time, this is where the developmental territory, thinking they're a separate independent promotion competing with WWE, started to fester with Bill DeMott, with Jody Hamilton in Deep South Wrestling, thinking they literally said, and I'm not only Swinger, but other people, it's us against them. And Swinger's they're subsidizing, they're paying you money to run the business. You know what I mean? So already they had a skewed way of looking at them as an auxiliary promotion to WWE, developmental, not a competing one. But also what Bill would do, and what I heard from Swinger and other people, not just him, it's not a one-size-fits-all training regimen for Johnny Swinger and the great Khali to be doing 500 Hindu squats, to be running cardio, to be doing all this stuff. That's where it got egregious, where, like you said, Khali's knees were already shot before he got into developmental, but you're making him put more impact, and you're essentially burning him out before he even gets to the main roster. Let them burn him out, not you. And that's what I think it was. The boot camp mentality does work with 18-year-old kids coming in, and you got to get their wind up and you got to do this, but it's not meant outside of maybe the humbling phase to make sure, hey, you're a big college athlete, but this is totally different. It's a very thin line that I think now at the Performance Center, they may have erred too much on the other side of it too. There needs to be some moderation in the middle. But yeah, Bill, for whatever intention he had to toughen them up and to break people in the right way, It's not a one size fits all thing when you come into that, especially in the time we're talking about.
WCW's Power Plant. So I'm presuming Bill may have spent some time there. I don't know. I know he was on the Indies and even in Japan, I think, all through the 90s. Crashed the Terminator, I think his name was at the time. But I always think of the Power Plant as the archetypal way to not train people. Because how many people walked through those doors that they ran off? I mean, they ran off Batista. They ran off Chael Sonnen. They ran off tons of people. They made a Goldberg. Did they really? I mean, they barely taught him anything, ultimately, apart from the absolute basics.
Well, you taught Goldberg that it's a shoot. That's what you told him.
And vending machines everywhere. All over the country.
The vending machines are smart enough to avoid the power plant in Deep South Wrestling. That's why the soda machines are undefeated.
But in my mind, I always thought, the Dwayne Bruce way of, screaming in the face is making you do push-ups till you puke kind of thing. Well, what's that proving? Nothing. I mean, apart from the fact that you might just want to, and this has happened in wrestling many, many times over wrestling in schools, affiliated with big companies and independent, is that you want to take the money and then run them off the first day kind of thing.
Yeah, but that's not exactly how you're going to keep your job at the power plant, because you're not feeding, really good. Now, they did have some good guys that came out of there, even with that all being said and done. But, man, when you talk about you missed the boat on a Batista, or Batista should thank his lucky stars because maybe it's better he just went straight to WWE developmental. But a Chael Sonnen, who became like the biggest heel in MMA outside of Conor McGregor. Dare I say, Conor McGregor took the blueprint from Chael Sonnen and turned it up to 11. But yeah, that's what wrestling does. It's really weird how wrestling, even to this day, there's somewhere, maybe in the top 5, but it's not the number one thing in a wrestling company nor a wrestling school, and that is to build wrestlers to continually to make money for the longest amount of time. It's almost like a level of resentment sometimes with these trainers. If they see talent, they almost have to destroy it sometimes. Do you sense that?
There's right ways. The thing is, NXT, I wanted to just go back on something else you mentioned about the great Khali and his knees. There's been a spate in the last couple of years because they've got strength and conditioning charts and, deadlift and squat records and everything like that. That once again, in some ways, they're overtraining wrestlers, the performers, and everyone, especially the women, are getting busted ACLs and having to take a year off. So your point of overtraining and wearing them out before they even get to the main roster is very, as true today as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
And I would look at that. I would look at PR chart, the leaderboard of, personal records of lifts. And I would say, okay, this is the top 5 of people that are going to blow their knees and backs out or tear a pec or a bicep. There's such a thing as training hard. I mean, there's a Mark Henry who is just a freak and can be the world's strongest man twice in a span of 20 plus years, So there's people out there that can do it, but it also he's the world's strongest man. It's his gimmick that he needs to back up with credibility. But you don't need everybody to be the world's strongest whatever. You just need them to look like the world's strongest or fittest or... I don't get that, man. That strength and conditioning stuff in there, isn't it supposed to protect the wrestlers that are training so they have functional strength, not trying to compete with each other? It doesn't make sense.
Let's go back onto Bill DeMott then. I've got a list of accusations that various wrestlers who worked under him have leveled against him. I don't know if you want to hear any more of them or not. I'll leave that up to you.
And one of them was the Nick Mitchell guy that we talked about in the past. Is he quoted there?
Nick Mitchell?
One of the Spirit Squad guys. He was rough on that kid.
I will... I'll read a couple. I mean, I'll forego the ones about various language, inappropriate. There's other people who he told them to kill themselves after they paid their condolences to Mike Graham. Bill DeMott would break a yardstick over their back.
Wait a minute, back that up. I'm sorry to interrupt. Wait a minute.
Yep.
His reaction to the Mike Graham thing, which was a suicide, correct?
Yes.
His reaction to tell these people that mourned his loss to do the same?
Yes. Bill DeMott, that was from Austin Matelson, who's Austin Draven. Judas Devlin in NXT. Derek Four, who was Chad Baker in NXT, said that he broke a yardstick over his back when he messed up. Ryan Collins, who's Brandon Traven, said more comments and stuff. Ryan Nemeth said about the strength and conditioning coach harassing female trainees that DeMott was an enabler and protector. Was there anything else? He also said that DeMott kicked Ryan in his cast when he had a broken leg. And I'm trying to think, there was Tara Calloway, there's Ricardo Rodriguez. What did Ricardo say? He said he talked about the number of trainees being injured suddenly going up, and when asked why, he joked, "Hey Bill," referring to DeMott. Anonymous female wrestler said, let me have a look, I'm just scanning through this, described a climate where everyone was afraid to speak up against DeMott for the sake of losing their jobs. This was the case with Rob McIntyre, the previous strength and conditioning coach, who Dave Meltzer explained was a scapegoat for many of the injuries and at least 2 divas, as well as a female advocate for talent relations. She also reaffirms the points about Judah's letter being mocked by DeMott. So apparently someone wrote a letter to HR. There's more. Kurt Hawkins, Drew Donovan, I can't even read her name. Joey Ryan, MVP, what's Bob Holly said? Holly states 2 former NXT students were there and said a few things that were not the exact same claims that were said against Bill. Sounds like he'd been doing it for a while. However, please note that Holly regards this as hearsay rather than confirmation. Mike Bucci said, there's a couple more, Rob Naylor and Kenny Omega will save to the end. Mike Bucci said Simon Dean stated that people were sick of Bill DeMott and Deep South, as it was a period where DeMott was fired but kept coming in anyway. I didn't realise that. He also referred to DeMott as a bully who would stiff people in the ring and stated that although Kevin Matthews was not liked by a lot of people, what he said about Bill DeMott was true. We'd have to find out his comments. Rob Naylor, who was a creative assistant of NXT, Wrestling Observer Live in 2015 confirmed that DeMott's comments to be true, including the mockery of Davey Boy Smith's death. He said this occurred in front of 25 witnesses, so it was odd that WWE claimed they found no wrongdoing in a press release about thoroughly investigating the matter. And Kenny Omega said some time ago he discussed his time with WWE Developmental. I'm just going to scan through what he said, bear with. The problem with Deep South to me is that there was a group that were tight with the boss and they would always go out and drink and have barbecues, that when WWE would say, who should we look after? And Bill DeMott would say, oh, look at this guy and this guy. Of course, those are his buddies. So a huge amount of accusations leveled there by like 20 different people. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's no smoke without fire. At this point, even in the 2000s, let alone the 2010s, was Bill DeMott a dinosaur as far as how to train wrestlers in a corporate environment?
Well, yeah, apparently so. That's what the actions and all the stories. Nova had told me, he actually called me when he was driving to get the stuff out of Deep South, when they were going to basically not shut it down, but basically no longer be a developmental territory. And this has probably everything to do with that, is my estimation, is my speculation and educated guess. This is not the Bill DeMott I knew from ECW as Crash the Terminator, nor got to know him. He was an HWA. I told the story with him, Dreamer, myself, get on that bus and save a bunch of people. We bonded. Bill had always been a very laid back, fun guy to be around. Never really a bully at all, dude. As a matter of fact, I thought he was very easygoing where he could get bullied back then. I know people can't believe that with the stuff we just read. But this is like so out of character, or people change, or the wrestling business changes people, the power of this. But man, this is, and for Mike to say that, Mike was in talent relations. So Mike gets the direct word on what's going on with that and has a one-to-one or, no degree of separation in this, from the office to Bill and us communicating that as well. I don't think Bill and I, because I know I communicated them from time to time, not too often, not anywhere near as often as before he became a trainer at Deep South, but once in a while, and I don't think it's ever come up. It probably will now if he's watching these clips. But yeah, where there's smoke, there's fire. And look at all the talents that we're looking at that have said basically the same thing. Bill's thing too, and I called him out on this. This is one of the last times I talked to him. He would make you do the international drill, the big drill, the up and overs, run you ragged in there, saying if you're one person and doing these bump drills and bull in the ring drills or whatever they are. And then Bill would come in and do what I called the beach whale and lay on top of you, and you had to try to get out from underneath them. So yeah, there was a certain weirdness about that where, like, why would you do that? If it's fun, or you're just trying to like get in there, and if it was me and I'm like, oh, I'm so blown up, and he would get in there and like kind of like amateur wrestle with me, but then let me go and just be like, got me, brother, you know, or whatever. But man, this is what I say about the wrestling business. I don't know how many times I've said it and will say it. This stuff is hard enough as it is without having to make it more difficult. You know, Great Khali, you take one look at him, you don't say 500 Hindu squats and run 2 miles, and then we start training. I don't get it, man. And that's the golden goose, by the way. Jody Hamilton, Bill DeMott, and anybody in developmental has the golden goose. All you got to do is play along with them. Now, I give Al Snow credit in a way, Danny Davis, Jim Cornette with OVW, because their way of training was the chicken before the egg type scenario. They were training people to get people to WWE and on TV. When WWE took it over, dare I say it, they ruined and almost made it ass backwards the developmental system, where people are worse when they get to the main roster rather than better.